My sleep paralysis demon is trying to warn me about something. I moved in on a Wednesday, under a sky that threatened rain but never followed through. The apartment was nothing special, a third-floor walk-up in an old building that had seen better days. The stairs creaked with every small step, and the hallway smelled faintly of dust and stale air. But it was mine. After weeks of searching, of feeling the weight of too many strangers' homes, it was too good to finally have a door that closed behind me and locked the world away. The landlord hadn't been there when I arrived. I had picked up the keys from an office that looked like it hadn't been used in a few years. The woman at the desk barely looked up and she handed them over, her nails tapping out a rhythm on the counter as I signed the lease. When I asked if there was anything I should know about the building, any quirks or issues, she shrugged. "Old place," she said. Her voice was low, bored. "They all have quirks." I wanted to ask more, but she was already turning away, and I didn't push it. I told myself that that was fine. I liked old buildings. They had a character. The apartment itself was small. One bedroom, a cramped kitchen with a stove older than I was, and a bathroom with a sink that never stopped dripping. The floors were wooden, the boards worn smooth and dark with years of footsteps. Every window had its own view of brick walls and fire escapes, a little slice of the city's forgotten corners. Still, it felt like a step forward, a fresh start, even if it was more like a pause in the middle of everything else. Murphy took to it immediately. He was an easy dog, loyal, quiet, with a nose for finding the best patch of sunlight in any room. As soon as I let him off his leash, he trotted around the apartment, sniffing each corner like he was mapping it out on his head. I watched him disappear into the bedroom and reappear in the kitchen, his tail wagging slow and steady. It made me smile, even if I felt a little out of place myself. New apartments always felt hollow at first, like the echoes of other lives hadn't quite faded. I spent the first few hours unpacking the essentials: clothes, books, a battered coffee maker I refused to give up. I didn't have much. Most of what I owned could fit in a couple of boxes, and I liked it that way. There was a comfort in having only what you needed, and no more. Like if you kept things simple enough, the world couldn't sneak up on you. By evening, I was sitting on the floor with Murphy, eating takeout straight from the carton. The city outside was a low hum, a steady murmur that felt oddly comforting. I'd grown up in places that went silent when the sun set, and I never liked the way that the quiet pressed in on me. Here, there was always something. The rush of cars, the occasional shout echoing down an alley, the distant music from a party I wasn't invited to. It was noise, but it was alive. The apartment itself was quiet in a way that didn't feel empty. The pipes groaned when the radiators kicked in, floorboards shifted as they cooled from the day's heat. It was an old building's way of breathing, I told myself. A sign that it was still standing, even if it creaked a little. That first night, I left the bedroom window cracked open, hoping to catch the last bit of evening air. I lay in bed with Murphy at my feet, the sheets cool against my skin. The city's glow filtered through the curtains, a soft light that turned the ceiling into shifting patterns of gold and shadow. I let my eyes wander across the cracked paint and water-stained plaster, tracing the lines of someone else's life. It was then, in that soft half-dark, that I noticed the crack in the wall. It was thin, no wider than a pencil lid, and it ran from the baseboard to just below the window. I hadn't seen it earlier, or maybe I just hadn't been looking. It was the sort of flaw that old buildings wore like a scar, something that happened over time and never quite went away. I sat up, leaning closer. The plaster was rough under my fingertips, the crack a jagged seam that caught the light just so. It didn't feel deep, but there was something unsettling about it all the same. Murphy shifted at my feet, his ears flickering. He didn't make a sound, but I could feel his head lift, his body tense. For a moment, we both just listened. The wind outside picked up, rattling the loose pane in the window frame. I lay back down, telling myself it was just the building settling. Old wood, old plaster. It was all bound to shift a little. I didn't think much more of it. Sleep came slow. Every time I closed my eyes, I found myself tracing the crack in my mind, following its path up the wall like it was trying to tell me something. I dreamed of dark hallways and locked doors, of whispers that faded the moment I tried to catch them. When I woke up, it was still there. Thin, unchanged, but somehow, I can't really tell you, but it felt different. The next morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air is holding its breath. I made coffee and sat on the edge of the bed, Murphy pressed against my knee. I ran my hand along the crack again. The plaster flaked under my touch, leaving a faint dusting of white on my fingertips. I thought about calling the landlord, but I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew he wouldn't have anything to say, or maybe because some part of me didn't want to hear what he would. I'm going crazy. This is just a small crack in the wall. I tried to keep busy that day. I walked Murphy through the neighborhood, let him sniff every lamppost and patch of grass he could find. I bought groceries I didn't really need, just to fill the fridge with something. But no matter what I did, my mind kept drifting back to that crack. The way it seemed to follow me when I wasn't in the room. The way Murphy just couldn't step close to it. His tail was always low, his steps cautious. By the time the sun set, I told myself it was just a wall. A wall. It was just a crack, and it was nothing to be afraid of. A grown man, afraid of a crack in the wall. Go figure. But when the night came, and the lights went out, I couldn't shake the feeling that the apartment was listening? Perhaps? I'm not too sure how to word it. That it was holding something back. It didn't feel right, like something that waited for me to close my eyes. And when sleep finally took me, it wasn't gentle. The next morning I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My mouth was dry, my limbs stiff, and there was a weight in my chest that wouldn't let me breathe. Murphy whined softly at the door, his ears low, his body tense. I got up and made coffee, trying to shake off the fog that clung to me. The sun streamed through the window, warm and bright, and for a moment I almost believed it could wash away the night's unease. But the crack was still there. Wilder, maybe. Or maybe just felt that way. I try to ignore it. I try to lose myself in the rituals of a new day. Breakfast, a new shower. I told myself that I kept moving, kept busy. I wouldn't think about it. But every time I walked past the wall, my eyes would drift back to it. That thin, jagged line that seemed to shift in the corner of my vision. I pressed my fingers against it, feeling the rough edges of plaster, the cold that seems to seep out from within. It was just a crack. I told myself that over and over. It was just a crack. That was just a crack. It's just a crack. It's just a crack. By the third day, I couldn't deny it anymore. The crack had grown. It split the wall like a wound, a hairline fracture that widened at the top, like something inside was pushing to get out. I couldn't sleep, or I think I didn't. I hope that this is some kind of hallucination. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the apartment's restless breathing, The groan of pipes, the soft shift of wood, the faint scratch of something I couldn't see. At some point, I must have dozed off because I woke up to the sound of paper rustling. Soft, steady, like pages being turned in the dark. I sat up, heart hammering, but the room was empty. Murphy was at the foot of the bed, his head low, his eyes locked on the crack. I got up, moving slowly, every step careful on the cold floorboards. The rustling grew louder as I approached the wall, a sound like whispers just out of reach. I pressed my ear to the plaster. For a moment there was nothing. Then a voice, faint, muffled. A single word, repeated over and over. Open. I stumbled back, my breath ragged in my chest. The sound faded, swallowed by the walls. Murphy let out a low whine, his tail tucked tight against his belly. I didn't know what to do. What does one do when someone hears that inside their walls? I felt like the walls were closing in, the air growing thick and heavy around me. I decided to do something, anything, to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I grabbed a small screwdriver from the kitchen drawer, and I started scraping at the edge of the crack, flicking away the old brittle paint. And that's when I found it. A small gap opened behind the plaster, no bigger than my palm. Inside is something. Something was wedged between the lathes and insulation. An old leather-bound journal. It's covered cracked and stained with time. I pulled it out carefully, feeling the weight of it on my hand. The leather was dry and brittle, the pages yellowed and curling at the edges. It smelled of mildew and something older. Something that made my stomach clench. I sat down on the floor, the journal in my lap, and I opened it. The handwriting was cramped and frantic, filling every inch of the page. The ink had faded in places, but I could still make out a few words. The way they twisted and looped across the page. The crack grows. The whispers won't stop. I can't sleep. It comes for me when I close my eyes. Each entry was more desperate than the last, the words tumbling over each other like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. I read for hours, the sun creeping across the floor in long, slow lines. Murphy lay beside me, his head on his paws, his eyes never leaving the crack in the wall. The journal's author, whoever had lived here before me, wrote about the same things I'd seen. The crack in the wall, the whispers at night, the figure that stood at the foot of the bed, pointing. A figure? I hadn't seen a figure. Regardless, one entry stopped me cold. It needs a warden. It read, someone to hold it shut, to keep it from coming through. I felt a chill run down my spine, my fingers gripping the journal so tight the leather creaked. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't want to know what it meant, but the more I read, the more I felt like I was seeing my own thoughts, my own fears, written out by someone else. I tried to call the landlord. I thought maybe he'd know something. Maybe he'd tell me if it was just a story, just the ramblings of a mad tenant. But when I dialed his number, it rang once. It rang twice. Then a voice I didn't recognize answered. It's too late. It said, calm, final. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mouth dry, my heart beating too fast. I tried calling again, but there was nothing. Just static. an empty line that hummed like the inside of a seashell. I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. I thought about going to the police, about showing them the journal, the crack in the wall, telling them everything. But when I finally worked up the nerve, they didn't believe me. They stood in my apartment, their eyes drifting over the cracked walls, the peeling paint. They looked at me like I was just a tenant with too much time and too little sleep. "Old buildings settle," one of them said, his voice gentle, like he was trying to reassure me. "If you're hearing things, maybe you should talk to someone. A doctor, maybe." I tried to show them the journal, but they didn't even want to look at it. They left me with a polite nod and a half smile, and that was it. When the door closed behind them, the apartment was quiet again. I didn't like the quiet. I sat in the living room, the journal heavy in my hands, and I listened. The walls creaked inside, and underneath it all, the same whisper. "Open." Murphy pressed close to me, his body trembling. I buried my fingers in his fur, trying to find some comfort in his warmth. But I knew it wasn't enough. The crack in the wall was still there, thin but growing longer. But I could feel it, the way it pulsed at the edge of my vision like a heartbeat I couldn't quite hear. I didn't know what to do, didn't know who to trust. The landlord was gone, the police didn't care. I mean, what am I supposed to do? All I had was this journal and apparently a figure in the night that points. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom after that night. I moved my mattress out to the living room, pushing it against the farthest wall. Some part of me thought that if I put enough distance between myself and that crack, it would stop. That the whispers would fade, that the figure, apparently, or whatever that journal mentioned, would potentially leave me alone. It didn't. The first night I slept in the living room, I woke up with the feeling of eyes on me. The apartment was silent. No jeers of parties, no random screaming in the alleys that I was used to at this point. I could hear my own breath, and underneath it, the faintest creak of the floorboards, as if someone was shifting their weight just out of sight. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't dare open my eyes. I didn't want to see what was there, and that's when it showed itself. I couldn't move. I was completely paralyzed. Sleep paralysis, I think it's called. There was a demon, a shadow, something in front of me, at the foot of my bed. And all it could do was mouth something, some kind of words, a phrase, a sentence. I don't know. I couldn't tell. I was more focused on its long, lanky finger pointing towards the crack. And after that, I just walked out the door. I fell asleep soon after. The days were easier, or maybe I just told myself they were. I'd sit in the kitchen with the journal spread out in front of me, tracing the frantic, looping script with my fingers. Each entry was worse than the last. The previous tenant's words growing more desperate, more resigned. The cracks grow. It breathes with the house. The demon is not my enemy. It's the warden. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that the figure in my dreams, or sleep paralysis, whatever, the one that pointed, that watched, was anything but a nightmare. But that night, when the world went quiet, I could feel it. The way the air felt thick and heavy, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't lift. The way the crack seemed to watch me even when my back was turned. And that demon just pointing and pointing, beckoning me to do something about that crack. The crack was wider now. I could see it even in the dim light of dusk. A thin black line that split the wall like a wound. Sometimes when I looked at it, I thought I could see it pulse. Like it was breathing, like it was alive. I tried to cover it. I pushed a bookcase up against it, stacked with dusty paperbacks and old photo frames. For a while, that worked. Out of sight, out of mind. But the whispers didn't stop. One night, I woke up to the sound of paper rustling, the same sound that had woken me before. I sat up, my mouth dry, my hands trembling. The bookcase was still there, but the crack had spread beyond it. Thin black veins that staked out across the wall like roots searching for water, and the journal. It was open on the floor beside me, the pages fluttering as if caught in a wind that wasn't there. The whispers were louder now. I could almost make out the words, the fragments of sentences broken and jumbled. Let us out. Must stay. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to shut it out. The sound was inside me, a vibration in my bones, a pressure in my skull. Murphy was pressed against my leg, his whole body trembling. I could feel his heart beating as fast as mine. The journal's entries grew stranger, more fragmented. I see them at night, faces in the crack. The warden keeps it shut. The warden must stay. I didn't want to believe it anymore. I told myself it was just ramblings of a madman, someone who'd lost himself in the dark. But in the quiet moments, when the sun had set and the world was still, I felt it. The truth of it, pressing in around me like the walls themselves were whispering. I tried to leave once, packed a bag, grabbed Murphy's leash, and walked to the door. But when I reached the handle, my hand froze. I could feel it, the weight of something just outside the door, waiting. The figure in my dreams, standing there with one finger raised, pointing. I let go of the handle. The door stayed shut. The sleep paralysis came again that night. I woke up pinned to the mattress, my breath caught in my throat. The room was dark, but I could see it. Of course, I was gonna see it. The figure standing at the edge of the doorway, tall and still. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just pointed at the crack. I tried to scream, tried to move. But all I could do was watch as the figure stepped closer, each movement as slow and deliberate as the clock's hand. It dropped at the foot of the mattress, its fingers lowered, and for the first time, it spoke. It spoke. It actually said words to me. Anyway, those two words shook me to my core. Seal it. I woke up with a gasp, my body trembling, my sheets damp with sweat. The crack was there, pulsing in the pale light of dawn. I opened the journal one last time. The final entries were little more than scrawls, the words slipping off the edges of the page. The portal must be sealed. The warden must stay. The cycle continues. I closed the journal and sat there, the weight of it in my lap. I didn't know what it meant, not really, but I knew what it wanted, what it needed. The crack was wider now, so wide. It was almost half the wall's length. I could see the darkness behind it. A shifting, breathing void that seemed to watch me as closely as I watched it. And the figure in my dreams, I realized now, it wasn't my enemy. It was my warning. I didn't leave the apartment much after that last episode. Each night, the crack seemed to grow a little wider, a little darker. During the day, it was almost easy to forget. The sunlight filtered in through the cracked window panes, catching the dust in slow, swirling patterns. The city outside felt distant, muffled by these old walls. Murphy, at this point, refused to even step into the bedroom. If I so much as walked near the door, his body would go stiff, and a soft growl rumbled in his chest. I trusted that instinct, whatever was in there, whatever that crack had become. It didn't want to be seen, and I didn't want to see it. I tried to fight it at first. I bought plaster and paint and tried to patch up the crack in the wall, but every time I sealed it, the next morning I'd find it had burst through again, wider than before. It felt like I was trying to bandage a wound that never stopped bleeding. The journal became my anchor, the only thing that made me feel like I wasn't completely losing my mind. I read it over and over, the frantic scrawl of the previous tenant becoming a litany I couldn't escape. The warden keeps it shut, the warden must stay, and the cycle continues. The words felt like they had been written for me, or maybe for anyone who ever set foot in this apartment. I tried to reach out again to anyone who would listen. I called the police one more time, my voice trembling, the words spilling out in a rush. They sent someone to do a wellness check. A young officer, polite and clearly skeptical. He walked through the apartment, his eyes flicking around over the walls, the crack half hidden behind the bookcase. "Old buildings do this," he said finally. "The stress makes us see things. You should consider talking to someone, a professional." He didn't see the way the crack pulsed in the corner in the room. It's just the same. He's just the same. He's like the others. He was like those other officers. He just told me to go see a professional, a doctor. As if a doctor could diagnose whatever this crack was. When he left, I felt more alone. So alone. And the only thing to comfort me were the whispers behind the walls. That night, the figure came closer. I woke up in the dark, pinned beneath the familiar weight. My breath, normal at this point. It stood at the foot of the mattress, so close I could see the faint suggestion of features in the pale light. Hollow eyes, a mouth that never moved. One finger raised, pointing. "Seal it," it said again. The words felt like they were being carved into my bones. I stopped trying to fight it. One morning I gathered my courage and called my landlord one last time. I didn't expect an answer. He'd been nothing more than a distant voice on the phone when I'd moved in, his presence as thin and shadowy as the crack itself. But this time, he picked up on the first ring. Hello?" His voice was soft, almost gentle, but there was something else in it, a tiredness that ran deeper than sleep. "It's me," I said, though I don't know if he even remembered my name. "The apartment, there's something wrong with the walls." A pause. Then, "It's too late." I felt my stomach drop. Again. "What do you mean?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "What's in the walls? What's happening to me?" Another pause, long enough that I thought he'd hung up, and softly, "The warden keeps it shut. The cycle continues." My breath caught in my throat. "What does that mean? Please, you have to tell me." His voice was almost a whisper. "You've already heard it. You've already seen it. It knows you now." A faint click and the line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time, my heart pounding. The landlord's words echoed in my mind. It knows me now. What does that mean, that it knows me now? I put the phone down and looked around the apartment. Murphy sat at my feet, his ears drooped and his eyes looking up at me, expectantly. Yeah, I didn't want to go in there, but I had to at this point. The journal's entries hinted at the crack that needed to be sealed, the price that had to be paid. I pushed open the bedroom door slowly, the hinges groaning in protest. The crack ran from floor to ceiling now, a jagged black line that seemed to drink in the light. I stepped closer. The air was cold and still. I pressed my hand to the crack, feeling the faint vibration beneath my fingertips. It was alive. I could feel it, a slow, steady pulse, like the heartbeat of something that had been buried too long. The figure stood behind me in the mirror. It was there, its finger raised, its blank face turned towards me. "Seal it," it whispered, though its mouth never moved. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see it, didn't want to believe that this was real, but I could hear the whispers in the wall growing louder with each breath. The last journal's page, a desperate scrawl. I know what must be done. The warden stays. The door closes. I understood then. The figure wasn't here to torment me. It was here to warn me, to show me the only way to keep whatever was behind that crack from coming through. I sat in the living room that night, the journal open in my lap, the crack hidden from behind those thin plaster walls. Murphy lay beside me, his breathing slow and steady, his body pressed close. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew the choice I had to make. The crack needed a warden. The cycle needed someone to hold it shut. And I was next in line. I was next in line. I took the dog's paws and said, "Hey, bud, I think this is it. This obsession had to end one way or another, and, well, I choose to end it on my terms." I walked up to the journal one last time and took a pen. And on the last page, I signed my name. I walked up to the crack and I decided I need to be the warden. I need to be the one that seals this crack to make sure whatever's behind this wall doesn't infect the world at large, doesn't affect you, doesn't affect my dog Murphy, and whoever's next in line after me. I'll be that shadow by your bed. Don't be afraid of me, but understand the duty that you must perform after me.